Nicknamed Vlam or Flame in English, 41-year-old Brakpan crime fighter Marius van der Merwe was shot and killed last Friday night at his home. It's mere weeks after he, as witness D at the Madlanga Commission, detailed an alleged 2022 murder cover-up involving Deputy Ekurhuleni top metro cop Julius Mkhwanazi. And it follows Van der Merwe's private security efforts to fight illegal mining on Gauteng's East Rand this year.
Obviously, he was someone who feared that his life might be in danger. That much was clear. And he left the restaurant and drove home, and he actually drove past his house on a side street to have a look down the road to be able to see if anyone was waiting outside the gate. He rounded the block and then pulled into his driveway. And as he pulled into his driveway, a white NP200 Bakkie pulled up. And by the time he was out of his car, this vehicle was abreast with him and 2 shots were fired. One missed him and struck the house behind where he was standing, and the other one obviously found its target.
Investigative journalist Jeff Wicks catches us up on these developments next.
New episodes of The Lead air Monday through Thursday at 7 p.m.
Later in our trending topic, how much would you pay for a 1995 Springbok player's medal gifted by the late Nelson Mandela? And finally, the Little Foot Sterkfontein skeleton was unearthed on this day in South African history. That's heard at the end of the show.
To know when the next episode drops, hit the like, follow, and subscribe buttons on our YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcast channels.
Daycare December boss is here, but this news cycle shows no signs of slowing. My name's Graeme Raubenheimer, this is The Lead, and this is the South African story. How's it, Jeff? Welcome back to The Lead. Lucky to see you again, my brother.
Always good to be here, Graeme.
Fantastic. Look, take us back to the scene of the crime on Friday night. Most of us, we were sort of winding down for the week, Jeff. And then that tip came from you on our breaking news WhatsApp group. You and Carl Cohen, you sprang into action. You went out to the scene in Brakpan. But take us to the home of the Van der Merwe's. That's where 41-year-old Marius, a father, was gunned down. Reportedly in full view of the family, as reports go at this stage.
Yeah, for sure. So by the time we got there, it was, it happened on Gold Street in Brakpan, which is obviously south of the city of Johannesburg. Quite a drive on a Friday night, but we managed to get there a couple of hours after the shooting took place. By that time, a cordon had been erected, and quite a long cordon, because I think early on people understood that this was a high-profile killing. His car that he was traveling in was still parked in his driveway with the doors ajar, and his body was still lying at the scene. A very dimly lit road, and you can understand why they chose exactly that site as their point of attack.
So what do we know about the suspects and where they were at the time? What did we glean in terms of SAPS sort of intel at this stage as to how this sort of hit was carried out?
So what we understand now, and obviously we've gotten a bit of clarity in the passage of the last couple of days, is that Marius van der Merwe was out with his wife and children having dinner at a local restaurant. And obviously he was someone who feared that his life might be in danger. That much was clear. And he left the restaurant and drove home, and he actually drove past his house on a side street to have a look down the road to be able to see if anyone was waiting outside the gate. He rounded the block and then pulled into his driveway. And as he pulled into his driveway, a white NP200 Bakkie pulled up. And by the time he was out of his car, this vehicle was abreast with him and 2 shots were fired. One missed him and struck the house behind where he was standing, and the other one obviously found its target. And he died as a result of his injuries at the scene.
Jeff, reports at this stage that there was an apparent assassination attempt on him prior in September. And apparently he was given the option to be in witness protection as offered by the state. What do we know here?
So in terms of the Madlanga Commission, the safety of witnesses is obviously a paramount and a very important concern, certainly for us as we start to cover the story. And it became clear within 24 hours of his murder that he was in fact offered protection by the commission, protection which he declined for reasons which are still unknown to us. But that said, he was obviously a man who was involved in the security sector, and there were other previous attempts on his life, which he himself has spoken about. He was intrinsically involved in combating illegal mining in the area in which he lived, and it's clear that he got up the nose of some dangerous people. What remains to be seen is exactly who is responsible for his death.
Right. Well, let's go into one of the main sort of focus points of the story thus far. Of course, we know he was witness D at the Madlanga Commission. We now know that in hindsight, he was basically detailing testimony regarding the police watchdog IPID's investigation into these allegations that disgraced Deputy Ekurhuleni Metro Police Chief Julius Mkhwanazi was part of this 2022 plot to cover up the torture and murder of a robbery suspect. Take us through what we know of Marius's detailing of that evidence to the commission, and he appeared to be unknowingly at the scene of the crime at the time and really didn't feel like he wanted to take part in this, but he soon found himself with questionable other figures at the scene of that night.
So I think the high watermark of Marius van der Merwe's testimony was obviously narrating this 2022 incident. And it's dramatic subject matter because in essence what it was is his telling of his role in, number one, the murder of a suspect in an extrajudicial killing, and then the disposal of the body. And the value that he added in terms of his testimony was basically narrating this event. And a person at the heart of this, and a man that he implicated, was the then sitting EMPD chief Julius Mkhwanazi, who supposedly aided this group of police officers and private security officials in not only covering up this murder and the torture of the suspect, but then helping them get rid of the body. Now, that has obviously direct implications on the probity of Mkhwanazi. It feeds into what the commission itself is looking at, is capture of the criminal justice cluster and arms of the state, like the EMPD, by malevolent characters. And this is certainly a malevolent case.
We saw Mkhwanazi say come out just recently now, and another report that was published just this morning that Mkhwanazi says he doesn't know of this man. Never met him, right?
Yeah, well, I mean, that obviously flies directly in the face of Witness D's testimony, because Witness D placed him at the scene in a dark-colored tracksuit directing this cover-up operation after the cops managed to murder a guy they were trying to rob of 500,000 rand. So, you know, when we talk about the net result of this killing, it is really devastating for the commission on two scores. Number one, Marius van der Merwe's evidence in chief and his statement can never be tested as evidence. You know, it does have value, but its value is diminished. And number two, one can safely assume that it would have an immense chilling effect on the commission's work. I think they would be hard pressed to get people to come and testify before that commission, knowing that one person has already been killed for the evidence that they've given.
What do we know? You've already alluded to this a little bit, Jeff, about the extent of crimes that Marius was fighting in the past. I understood that he owned this task force, a private security company essentially, that policed several parts of the Gauteng East Rand, and I understood that he was sort of uprooting illegal mining in an area called Plastic City. What do we know about the extent of his footprints here?
Well, that seems to be his bread and butter and the work that he was doing. Obviously, you know, we've spoken to members of his family and they've told us, you know, he felt his life was under threat since 2022, after he obviously did a bit of an about turn and really implicated all those other individuals who were supposedly having a role in the killing of that suspect. But in terms of the work that he was doing, he was a private security company boss, and he was dealing with, you know, illegal mining, specifically in Plastic City, and that in itself is a dangerous pursuit. We know that these are, you know, organized hierarchies of criminal enterprises, and the people who are part of them are well armed and not afraid to take life. And I mean, that adds to the murk around this assassination, and it's going to be something that the police will have to decode, because you've essentially got a man who was a target for many people. So many people would essentially have a motive for his death, and they'll now have to try and unravel whether or not he was killed for what he said before Madlanga, or whether or not he managed to piss someone else off and they took the step to eliminate him.
Because no arrests, right? At this stage, we don't know the extent of how far along police are. I did see that we had reported as the news team that CCTV cameras did pick up the number plates of that Nissan white Bakkie.
So the extent of what we know was basically communicated by the SAPs at the scene of the crime on Friday night. And what was told to journalists who had gathered there was that two men had been identified as, number one, the driver and the passenger of this bakkie, so the potential shooter and the getaway driver. And then automatic number plate recognition cameras and that network, which is dotted around the suburb, had picked up this white NP200 as it left the area. No arrest just yet, but it's clear that the police have a spoor to follow, and let's hope they can see it through to its ultimate conclusion.
Yeah, we also saw this report. Nat joins, as well as the commission. They've met. They've agreed, look, we need to beef up security. And if I remember the first day of the commission sort of getting underway, a lot of us as journalists, and the lead was posted there, we had asked the spokesperson, Jeremy Michaels, of the commission, look, it appears as if things are a little bit lax here today. Just speaking to other, security experts off the fly, you would have expected to see at least snipers posted on the above rooftops of buildings, keeping an eye on the very high-profile people that are coming to give very important and critical evidence here. And then they took some time to beef that up. Yeah, they've taken the opportunity to do so yet again.
So it seems like they're going to be stepping up security across many work streams, but specifically for the EMPD witnesses. So, Van der Merwe fell within that bucket, and there's many other witnesses who've spoken about people implicated at the EMPD who will now be protected should they wish to have that. I recently attended the commission last week, and I must say the security I felt was quite high. But the reality is, and like with most targeted assassinations, you will not be targeted in a situation like the commission where security is so stringent. You'll be targeted when you are at your most vulnerable, when you leave and when you're driving. That's exactly what happened to Van der Merwe. So for the other EMPD witnesses, I would expect them to have 24-hour protection, because it's clear if the motive can be linked to Van der Merwe's testimony before the Madlanga Commission, then other people may be in danger too.
President Cyril Ramaphosa, Jeff, very quick to issue a statement saying they'll do more to protect whistleblowers in future. I mean, we've heard this a lot of times before. It all feels quite hollow when it comes from government, doesn't it?
Absolutely. I think when it talks about protection of whistleblowers, we must maybe draw a bit of a distinction between Mr. Van der Merwe. In this case, he was a witness. Protection of whistleblowers is a much more convoluted and nuanced issue. So we know that there's a legislative process underway to try and sort of cement the protections for whistleblowers in the South African context, because they are so important. But of course, the state can do more. We've had this legislation trying to pass through the houses of government for many years now. And the sooner that legislation, is actually brought to fruition, we will see more whistleblowers protected. You talk about whistleblowers. A prime example is Babita Deokaran. Had that legislation existed when she was reporting malfeasance at Tembisa Hospital, maybe the outcome would have been different for her.
Right. We sort of, we feel like as the media we're going to be winding down for the year, but it doesn't really feel like it, does it, Jeff?
No, it never does. You just think you can take your foot off the pedal, and then something like this happens. And the import of a murder like this cannot be understated. The chilling effect it will have, not only before the Madlanga Commission, but everywhere, will be significant. And again, it feeds into this endless string of targeted assassinations we see far too often on our streets. And it's always people who have some sort of opposition towards corruption. In Mr. Van der Merwe's case, it's because he spoke out about a murder and a body dump which he himself played a role in. Other officials like Mpoma Fole reported irregularities at Ekurhuleni Metro Municipality. The common trope here, or the golden thread throughout all of this, is that if you stand against criminal wrongdoing or corruption, you become a target. And the unfortunate reality in our context as we sit here today is that it's easier to eliminate someone than to take them on through traditional means like the courts.
Final question, Jeff. Just looking specifically at Metro Police Departments, and you've had this biggest push here in the DA-led Western Cape for such a long time to give the Metro Police more investigative teeth, right? And you look at the example of the Ekurhuleni Metro Police Department, the blue lights for the cat, this 2022 alleged cover-up of the murder and torture of a warehouse robbery suspect. What does it leave you with in terms of your questions? Do you feel like Metro Police, I feel they should be monitored a lot closer because of that very conversation of whether or not they should get more power or not?
It's a difficult conclusion to draw. My view is that Metro Police are a force multiplier for the SAPS, a beleaguered organization that could really use all the help that they could get. But it has to be in a scenario that merits the devolution. And if you firstly, I don't think you can compare the Cape Town Metro Police Department and the Ekurhuleni Metro Police Department. Those are apples and oranges.
Yeah, sure.
Especially when you consider in the EMPD, the capture of that organization has been made very plain to us. Giving a captured organization more influence and more investigative powers is basically a hiding to nothing. But, in the very noble sense of what it is intended to achieve, then yes, because we know the police cannot deliver on their mandate. And if Metro Police can aid with investigative capabilities, then why not? Just please, God, no, not the EMPD, not in its current state.
Yeah, sure. No, the Cape Town example is just purely for the fact that the DA is pushing for this devolution, right? And so it is quite potentially precedent-setting within its own right. Jeff Wicks, senior investigative journalist at News 24, thank you so much for your time. Good luck with the thunder and lightning in the background, Brie. It gave hair on my chest last week.
It's heartfelt storms. Cheers, G.
Cheers, brother.
Trending topic.
Moving to our trending topic, and how much would you pay for a 1995 Springbok player's medal gifted by the late Nelson Mandela? Perhaps 10,000 Rand, maybe as much as 100? Well, that's what former Springbok loose forward Adrian Richter is hoping for when the one-of-a-kind medal he got from Tata Madiba goes on auction this week. Starting bids, though, are 30,000 Rand. Richter has also put up a rare bronze medal and marble rugby trophy that could fetch up to 60,000. It's all available via the Old Johannesburg Warehouse Auctioneers Group. Richter was not in the winning 95 final side, but he did captain the Boks in their 21-8 win over Romania, as well as scoring a victory over Canada and landing tries in both games. He then retired as a Blue Bulls captain in 1998. What say you? Drop us a voice note, 072 562 3179.
Listen Up is News 24's sharp new podcast, where hosts Tim Cohen and Mark Barnes cut through the clutter with bold takes and unfiltered insight.
They're not fighting for the good of South Africa. And so this has degenerated into a series of tit-for-tat spats. How's that for a bit of poetry early in the morning?
Smart, punchy, and unapologetically real.
President Ramaphosa has explained why he did it, and the reason he did it was because he said that people weren't allowed to go to America, and then Andrew Whitfield did, and then there's a dispute about whether or not he asked.
Catch new episodes of Listen Up every Tuesday on News 24 or wherever you get your podcasts.
I know a lot about this. Not really.
Yeah, there we go.
Here goes.
The accused for a change. Yeah.
And finally,
and ending off now with On This Day in South African History, it's the 8th of December 1998. Well, on this very day, one of the most remarkable archaeological breakthroughs of the 20th century was formally recorded in the South African Journal of Science. Dr. Ron Clark, a leading scientist at the University of Witwatersrand's Paleoanthropology Research Unit, announced the discovery of an extraordinarily well-preserved petrified skeleton deep inside the Sterkfontein caves near Krugersdorp. The find, later nicknamed Little Foot, belonged to a species of Australopithecus and is estimated to be about 3.5 million years old. Standing roughly 1.2 meters tall, this early hominid predates the genus Homo, which is the lineage to which modern humans belong, making it a key piece in understanding our human evolutionary history. What made Littlefoot so significant is its state of preservation. It was the most complete Australopithecus skeleton ever discovered, far surpassing previous South African finds, including the famed 1924 Town Child. Clark and his team painstakingly extricated the skeleton from rock over several years, revealing details that would transform scientific theories about early human ancestors, their anatomy, and their movement. The Sterkfontein Caves were declared a UNESCO World Heritage Site in the year 2000, and the surrounding area then became known as the Cradle of Humankind, an extraordinary contribution to humanity's origin story. Drop us your mails at thelead@24.com. Hit like, follow, and subscribe on all our various platforms and wherever you find your podcasts to be notified of our next edition. Expect normal coverage this week and next, and then a scaling down of The Lead over the festive season, where we'll be wrapping up your top stories of 2025 with the stellar cast of journalists right here at News 24. My name's Graeme Raubenheimer. So long as there's trusted news first, we'll always have The Lead.